All right, let's try this again. I think this is the 15th time I've recorded this tutorial, so hopefully it'll work this time. I'm going to go pretty fast, but if you need to stop, pause, rewind, feel free to do so. So we're going to create a Kirby-ish monster, just like a squishy monster, and we're going to add some bones to it, use a little bit of inverse kinematics with it, and then we're also going to learn about weight painting and how to add weight painting to this. So if we go ahead and press create a new file, press X, delete, and we now have our new file. Let me get my cursor highlighter open. There we go. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and press the Y negative. Okay, yeah, Y negative, because we want to be facing forward in the Y positive direction with X positive on one side, X negative on the other. That's the really important part, that we get X on both sides. You could also press the numpad 1 for that. Okay, with this, we're going to do Shift A, and we're going to add a meta ball and a ball. And you'll see down here in the bottom right, there are properties for the meta ball. And here in the resolution, we're going to take that all the way down, 0.05. So it's a nice smooth meta ball. And we're going to press G, Z to move it up on the Z axis and maybe scale it up a bit. You can see looks good. Now we're going to duplicate this ball by selecting it, Shift D, and move it out. Now you see with the meta ball, they kind of stick to each other, kind of like atoms or silly putty. And pretty cool. There's a lot of stuff that you could do with the meta ball. But in this case, we're just going to create a little Kirby-ant monster. Bring it over to the side, press S to scale it down, and we're going to make the arms for our Kirby. And we want the ball to stick out a little bit. And if it looks good, we have enough arm to move. We're going to Shift D and press X because we want to keep it level with the other arm. And we want it to be as close as possible to this side. Doesn't necessarily have to be perfect, but we want it to be close. And one way I could check is I see where this circle hits these two intersecting lines, and I kind of want the same thing to happen over here. So we want it to be as even as possible. Now, there's probably an easier way to do this, but this is how I'm doing it. All right, Shift D to duplicate that, and now we're going to create a leg. And I'm going to scale that leg down because we want the legs to be separated here. Scale, grab. That looks about good. Shift D and X to move it along the X-axis. And we'll move that out. That looks good. All right, so we could orbit around and we could see our little Kirby monster here. Looks pretty good. And now what we want to do is click on the object, or you could drag and select all the objects and go to Object, Convert. We're going to convert this to a mesh. If we go into edit mode up here or press Tab, we could see that we have lots and lots of vertices here to work with. The problem is the vertices do not look very good. We're going to change that. So let's go back into object mode. Press Tab, and we're going to go to the modifier properties here. We're going to add a remesh modifier. We're going to set the voxel size here to 0.2. Now you can see we have a much simpler model to work with, and that looks pretty good. It's going to clean up the animation, or sorry, it's going to clean up the mesh, make it a little easier to animate. So what we want to do is click this little caret here and apply that. Now we go into edit mode and we can see how the mesh has changed and that it is a little bit cleaner. But not enough vertices to move around for animation, or if we did, might not look very good. So what we can do is we could go back into object mode, go to modifier, and solidify. Sorry, not solidify. Go to modifier and go to subdivision surface. You can see that it smooths it out, subdivides all of those, adds more vertices. And that's probably a good setting. Levels viewer of 1 and render of 2. And we go ahead and apply that subdivision surface. So now we have more vertices to work with, and it'll be easier to animate. I'm going to go back into the front view mode, and then I'm going to change it in object. I'm going to go to shade smooth, and it makes for a nice smooth mesh. Good. A body of our Kirby is made. We need to do one last thing that's really, really, really important, and that's press Control A and apply all transforms. You have to do that. Do not miss that step. All right, next step, Shift A, and let's add an armature and a single bone. And we'll go into the armature properties here and set the viewport display to in front so we could actually see the bone. Now we're going to go into edit mode, tab. We're going to select the body of the bone and grab G on the Z axis and move it up. And grab that tail, G, Z, and move that up as well. We want it roughly the size of the body. And then what we want to do is we want to name the bone. So here in these properties, we're going to call this body. Okie. Next, we're going to add another bone. Shift A adds a new bone. And notice that this bone is not parented to anything. It's a little orphan bone all by its little lonesome. I'm going to grab that and move it over here by the arm. And with the bone property open, the bone selected, we're going to change this to arm.l. Make sure you put the .l at the end because we're going to use the symmetrize feature to copy from the left to the right. Makes for building it out pretty easy. We're going to duplicate that one, Shift D, bring this tail, grab it, move it over here, take this bone and name it leg.l. Okay, looks pretty good. So now we want to parent these bones to the body. So we want the body to affect these bones and where these bones move. So if we select this bone and shift select the body and press Control P, we want to make parent and keep offset. So it's going to create this dotted line right here that indicates that it has a relation. And we could always check the relations over here in the bone properties. We could see here who the parent of that bone is. The body is the parent. We're going to do the same thing with this bone. Select the bone, shift select that, Control P, and keep offset. Good. Next is we're going to add the IK bones. We're going to add the IK bones to the leg and the head. We're going to create new bones. I changed my view to X because I just want to look at the side of it, and I'm going to extrude it out. So on the leg, we want to select the tail of the leg and E and Y, and it's going to constrain that extrusion on the Y axis. Go ahead and bring it out. Select the bone. We're going to name that bone leg IK.L. Press enter to confirm. We're going to go to the head, the tail of the head here, so the top of that bone. We're going to go there and we're going to extrude along the Z axis and bring it out. Select the bone. And we're going to name that body IK. We don't need a L or .L on there because we only need one bone. All right, last thing we want to do is we want to unparent this bone from any of the other bones. We want it to be all by its little lonesome. Otherwise, you get some really weird stuff going on. So 2 ways to do that. Select the bone, Alt-P, and clear parent. Or the other way to do it is select the bone, go to relations, and just remove that relation. It does not have any relation. It is its own bone. Okay, with that all set up, we should be ready to symmetrize this side over to the right side. The way to do it is select these bones here, just the arm, leg, and that IK bone. Go to armature and go to symmetrize. And what it did is it copied those bones over to the other side. And now we just want to go in, we want to verify the names are correct. Arm R, leg R, and leg IKR. Looks good. All right, next step is to go into object mode. We're going to parent this geometry to the armature. So we want to select the body first, shift select the armature, and we want to control P to parent. In this case, we want to parent with automatic weights. Just like that. Oh, last thing, actually undo that. Don't do that. We want to, one thing I missed in here, well, let's go back into this armature. We want to turn off deform for the IK bones because those shouldn't deform the mesh. Only the leg and the arm should deform the mesh. So select the bone, go to the bone properties here and go to deform and uncheck that. Select that, uncheck, and select the head and uncheck deform. All right, now we could go into object mode, select the body, shift select the armature, control P, and set it to automatic weights. Now, if we select our armature and go into pose mode, which is Alt Tab, we should be able to move it. Let's see, rotate, that moves that one. Grab, oh, we didn't set up the IK, that's why. Okay, so we need to do that now. Let's go into edit mode on the armature. And we need to set up our inverse kinematics here. And that one's pretty easy. Select the IK bone, shift select the leg bone. And sorry, we need to be in a pose mode. Select the IK bone, shift select the leg bone, shift I to add IK to active bone. And then we need to go to the bone constraint properties here. We want to change the chain length to 1. Do the same thing on the other side. Select this IK bone, shift select the leg bone, shift I, add to active bone, and set the chain length to 1. We're going to go now to the head here, shift select the body, shift I, add IK to active bone. And and set the chain length to 1. All right, now you could grab these IK bones and it should move the rest of the body. Grab the leg, just make sure that's moving that bone. Got this one's moving that bone. I could rotate this one, R, rotate, and that looks great. So we now have a basic rig for a Kirby. The next part is changing the weight painting so it doesn't do this right here. That does not look very good. We want to change that. So let's go back into our front-facing view here. And we're going to exit, go back into object mode. We're going to select the armature first, then shift select the body. Before we do that, I just want to make a note. Well, actually, let's just do this. We're going to select the armature, shift select the body, and we're going to move it into weight paint mode. And if we hold down Control and we click a bone, it's going to change some colors of different areas of the bone. And I'll explain what these colors are. Red in weight painting means all the vertices that are red will move 100% with the bone. All the vertices that are in blue will not move at all with the bone. And you see that when we control select this, I moved this bone, I rotated it up, but you see nothing else is getting moved because it's all blue. Green is 50%, so it'll move it about 50% of strength when you move it with the bone. So it's not going to move as much. So this I don't really care for much, and I want to change it. And the way to change it is first go to the gradient tool here, and the weight at 1 is red. The weight at 0 is blue. So we want to set the weight to 0. And if we click and drag this, you'll notice that it paints that mesh, whatever weight you have set. So it's starting off at 0 and it's doing a nice gradient. So it looks really smooth. So what we could do is move it so most of it's green, a little bit of yellow on the arm, and that looks pretty good. If you're never sure, you could control select the bone and rotate it, and you could see how it moves with that weight painting. If you don't like it, you can go back and change it. So that bone looks nice. I'm going to select this one, weight, and I'm going to drag this up about right there. I'm going to rotate this bone, see how it looks. That looks pretty good. I'm going to do the same for the leg bone. Control select, drag our gradient. That looks good. Rotate the bone. The bone doesn't rotate. Why doesn't it rotate? Because it's connected to this IK bone. So if we select the IK bone and we press G to grab, we could then move that bone with the IK bone. And we could see how the geometry deforms when we move the bone. I'm going to press escape to cancel that. And I'm going to control select this bone. I can drag, paint it. Got this one, move it, and that looks pretty good. So if we move these bones around, we could see how that mesh is deformed. And we didn't change the body because I found that the body looks pretty good. Okay. The body, when you move that body bone, it deforms most of these vertices in the middle, but doesn't touch the arms and the legs. If I press A and Alt R and Alt G, it resets all those in post mode. So that works. Now we go back into object mode, select our armature, go into pose mode. Alt Tab is your shortcut for that. And we can move these around and we can see how it looks. Move the body here. Rotate the arm. Rotate the arm. Maybe throw this one up, this one back. And that looks good. He's got a nice active pose here. That looks really awesome. Now, if we go into object mode, we'll see that pose was saved. And if we ever want to hide the bones and see the mesh a little better, we can go up to the eyeball here, click it, and hide that. Another option too to change the bones, if we go to the armature settings here, viewport display, we could change the display as, by default, it's set as octahedral. We could change that to stick, B-bone, envelope, and wire. And you can choose whichever one looks best to you. I like to use B-bone or octahedral. All right. So in the next video, I'm going to stop this here. Hopefully you were able to create it and I finally recorded the video. The next one is a bonus video that shows you how to do texture painting.